Not technically, it's a continuation of the meeting that was already done, I guess. That's not incorrect. If I do it again, it's gonna lock me out. And cap locks is on, number one,
You want to tap or are we going to wait?
cap locks is on, and how fast? You want me to
What'd you
fix the
say,
thing?
Shirley?
Okay.
Just waiting to see if we're live streaming. Thank you. Good evening, councilors. We're continuing on with the executive committee from Tuesday. And for planning advisory, want to welcome Pam, who could make it this evening. I see Mr. Balcom hasn't arrived, and I have no idea if he's there regrets, so we'll continue. I'd like to welcome those in the gallery and staff. Glad you could make it this evening. First item on the agenda is Serenity Lodge, the second staff report, and it's for Debbie, and she's at 2. And you could begin, Debbie, when you're ready.
I have to put it in first, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you mentioned, this is the second staff report, and staff have been directed to find a way to separate Serenity Lodge from Ms. McCaskill's property through a development agreement or alternative, and it requires amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw, in addition to an amendment to the existing development agreement. So the subject property is outlined in red. There's 2 civics on this property. We have a single unit dwelling located down here and Serenity Lodge up here. The property is zoned R2 with a development agreement that permits Serenity Lodge an institutional use to operate. We have Russell McKean Drive, which is a right-of-way easement, and then Bakery Lane. Here's a satellite image of the same property, and as I mentioned, Serenity Lodge is located here. Russell McKean Drive, which is a right-of-way easement. Bakery Lane is down here, and there's a 6 meters frontage on Bakery Lane that the single unit dwelling uses. This is an image of Serenity Lodge. This is looking across the street, looking south down Russell McKean Drive, and looking north on Russell McKean Drive. So there are a number of items that have to be completed in order to allow for the subdivision of the land to take place. First off, we need amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. So a new policy and regulation are required to be added to the planning documents to permit council to consider the subdivision of land for an institutional use, IUZone use, on an existing right-of-way easement in the growth management areas on land that is zoned 2 dwelling unit residential R2. As I mentioned, there is an existing development agreement which currently permits Serenity Lodge. This will need to be updated to be substantially amended so that the proposal can be considered under council's new proposed policy. And in addition, the property owner must acquire land and frontage from 35 Russell McKean Drive, which is a family member, in order to have frontage on Russell McKean Drive, the right-of-way easement. It currently has no frontage on Russell McKean Drive. So this is the proposed plan of subdivision. Here we have Russell McKean Drive. So this will be the new lot, which will be subdivided on Russell McKean Drive. It'll have frontage there. It acquires some land from the neighboring property. And then the remaining lot where the residential dwelling is located will maintain its 6 meters of frontage on Bakery Lane. The proposed amendments only allow for institutional uses on a right-of-way easements by development agreement. It doesn't allow for any other uses to be considered on that existing right-of-way easement. And the amendments to the planning documents and the substantial development agreement amendment can run concurrently, so we can do them both at the same time. However, the policy amendments and land use bylaw amendments have to be in effect prior to the development agreement being entered into on the subject land, so that has to go through the process. So it just means a couple months at the end of the council's decision. We've included the proposed amendments into the planning document, into the staff report. So there's a policy amendment and a land use bylaw amendment to enable the subdivision of a right-of-way on a right-of-way easement for institutional use zone uses in an R2 zone. Citizen engagement, we did hold a public information meeting for the proposed amendments on July 14th, and those notes from the meeting have been attached to the staff report for the information of Planning Advisory Committee members. And we've also mailed out questionnaires to residents within 300 meters of the subject property, asking for comments, and the results of those questionnaires will be included in the final staff report. So the recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee recommends the council give first reading to the proposed municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw amendments and initial consideration to the development agreement and authorize staff to schedule a public hearing. And the recommended motion is below here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Make sure you signed in again. If you, I did. Councilor Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm going to make the recommended motion. Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council give first reading to the proposal to amend the MPS and the LUB by adopting policies that will permit council to consider entering into a development agreement on land zone 2 dwellings unit residential R2 zone to permit institutional use IU zone uses to be subdivided on existing right-of-way easement in a growth management area. And also, give initial consideration to entering into a development agreement to permit PID 45287638 to be subdivided on an existing right-of-way easement for the purpose of enabling a public hearing and authorize staff to schedule a public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Councilor Moose?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, at this stage of where we're at now, is it possible that it will be more than the R2 zone? Add zone to it, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the property zone isn't changing, it's remaining R2. It's just that the development agreement, there's already a development agreement on the lands that allow for that institutional use, that senior care facility. And we're not proposing to amend that zone, it's just amending the policies to enable the land to be subdivided on a right-of-way easement through the development agreement as well. So that way we just have to amend that development agreement that's existing there for the subdivision of land to take place.
Yeah, but right now we're doing it for the R2 zone. Is there any way we could add like the Lakeshore Residential or something like that right now, or it's not possible at this stage?
So you, Mr. Chair, that's not the direction that staff were giving. We were given direction, and there's no lakeshore, also there's no lakeshore residential zone in the growth management area, so this is particular to the growth management areas?
Yeah, there's some in Mount Union.
Oh, I
too,
guess there's
and we
some in
have-
Mount Union, yeah.
And we have somebody with same,
Is there an institutional use?
no, just residential use, like, I'm just asking if it's possible this way.
Give you a chance, John, to weigh in.
Through,
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're going to public hearing next
Yeah.
week, so
Okay, no.
you've
that's
already
fine.
given first reading, so
Yeah.
it's too late
Yeah,
for
yeah,
this.
that's what I want to know, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Warden McPhee.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to say that I attended the public information meeting and it was all very interesting to hear everybody's comments. But there were two people that spoke towards the end of it. I think it was Marie McKean, who lives on Russell McKean Drive. She brought up some interesting points about what has gone on there historically and how it seems like there's being special treatment to allow this subdivision of properties to occur. And also another resident that lives at the end of Russell, or across from Russell McKean Drive, brought up the condition of the road and how it should be upgraded before we allowed something like this to happen. And I think that that's something that we should consider I know there's a public hearing coming up, but at this stage, I think maybe we're ahead of the game, and we need to know more about what these problems are, what should be done to improve the road and take care of some of these concerns for these residents. So I won't be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Having heard the comments, but speaking in support of the motion, Serenity Lodge, I can remember when the application came through, and I can remember when Serenity Lodge became, I don't know the proper name for it, but like people could go there with the government subsidies or whatever they're called. And it's been a godsend for the local area and outside. And I have never really heard of anyone who's been fortunate enough to go to Serenity Lodge that has not been very happy there. And I don't think that doing this change, which it's not changing anything. It's not changing the amount of use on the road. It's just simply good preparation in my mind to separate the dwelling unit from the Serenity Lodge, and it just sets it up for, I believe, continued success and continued good service to the area. So I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Nobody left to speak. We'll go to the vote. And the vote is passed with Deputy Warden McPhee voting nay. Thank you, Debbie, for that report.
It is.
Next item on the agenda is PYC property, Havenwood Drive, second staff report. Debbie, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, as you mentioned, this is the second staff report for the application for RYC Property Limited. And it's located at the end of, the property is located at the end of Havenwood Drive in Shubenacadie. And there's two portions of the land under consideration. There's the portion closest to Havenwood, the end of Havenwood Drive, so that's the eastern portion, and that's proposed to be redesignated to medium-density residential neighborhood, MR, and to be rezoned from to townhouse R2T. And then the western portion of the land, this was added as part of a retracement plan for the subdivision, so that's why it wasn't included in the initial application. And so that's proposed to be changed from rural use to established residential neighborhood ER designation, and then rezoned to two dwelling unit R2 zone. So the townhouses area would allow for 4 on-street townhouse buildings for a total of 24 dwelling units on that eastern portion of property. And then for the western portion of property, to be changed to R2 would allow for approximately 10 semi-detached units for semi-detached buildings for 20 units in total. The applicant is also proposing to add a stormwater management pond here, but that's part of the subdivision application process. So here, again, the eastern portion of land shows where the townhouse units are located. And then in the western portion shows where the semi-detached units are located. The rest of the land was rezoned last year in 2024. Satellite image showing the two areas. And I should note that we also have a little portion of open space down here. And then images of the property showing the subject lands from the end of Havenwood and then Havenwood Drive itself. So the existing portion of Havenwood Drive is a public gravel road owned by the province, and under the requirements of the subdivision bylaw regulations, the proposed road extension will be a municipally owned paved road with a sidewalk. Policy RD 29 of the Municipal Planning Strategy is a policy that guides council in evaluating proposals to establish a new medium-density residential neighborhood designation areas. We'll assess this application based on the criteria, and it'll be included in the final staff report. Policy IM 11 permits council to consider private applications to amend the municipal planning strategy where those amendments are in the best interest of the municipality. And provision 10.16 of the subdivision bylaw establishes that no more than 100 lots shall be serviced by a single road access. So right now there's like 25 lots. Rezoning approved in 2024 added 47 additional lots. And under the current proposal, there would be 41 lots for semi-detached buildings and 4 townhouse unit lots for approximately 70 lots, and that would allow for 142 dwelling units in the end. Any decision by council regarding the application is not appealable to the Nova Scotia Regulatory and Appeals Board, and I should note that 70 lots doesn't include if the subdivision of those semi-detached units, so they could use the additional 30 lots to subdivide those units so they could sell off each side separately. Citizen engagement, so again, a public information meeting was held on July 14th, the same night as Serenity Lodge, and those notes have been included in the staff report. And we've also mailed out a questionnaire in relation to this application to residents within 300 meters of the subject lands, and those questionnaires will be provided to Planning Advisory Committee members for the consideration with the final staff report. And the recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee recommends the council give first reading to the mapping amendments and authorize staff to schedule a public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. What is your wish, council? Councilor Head.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the recommended motion. Give first reading to the application from RYC Property Limited to amend the MPS and LUB by changing the land use designation of PID 45097-227 for eastern portion to medium density residential neighborhood, MR, designation and rezone the same lands to townhouse R2T zone for the western portion to establish residential neighborhood, ER designation, rezone the same to 2 dwelling unit residential neighborhood R2 zone for the purpose of enabling a public hearing and authorize staff to schedule a public hearing.
Second that.
So moved and second. On before the motion, Councilor Marion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Debbie, question for you. In the report, it mentions that a new lift station might be required, and this is just me being new. Generally, how does it work with paying for that if it were required?
So I believe the applicant has already submitted a preliminary plan of subdivision for the initial phase of the development. And with that, they got comments from our engineering staff about what has to occur with the lift station and that. And in most cases, what happens is the developer pays for the upgrade to the lift station, and then there may be credits towards them for future, as the lots are subdivided. The director of I&O could probably explain it a little bit better than I can, but generally they do the upgrades, and then there could be credits towards future development charges there.
Okay, thank you.
Is that enough, Councilor? You're okay with it? Thank you, Councilor. Nobody left to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Debbie, for that report. Next item on the agenda is motion C24-309, illuminated signs. First staff report. Debbie, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the regular meeting in September of 2024, Council passed the following motion. Moved that staff bring a report on internally lit signs and how we can do this better use in the rural use north zone. As a result of this direction, staff have prepared a review of why the land use bylaw excluded illuminated signs. So we have two types of illuminated signs. We have a digital illuminated sign, and then we have an internally illuminated sign. The digital signs are those ones where you can change the message, change the picture, it can move, those types of items. So that's the first one shown here. And then the internally illuminated sign are those signs where it's a static sign, and it's just illuminated from the inside, shown below here. So illuminated and digital signage is not permitted in the majority of zones where the signage may have a negative impact on residential or rural uses. The signs are limited in their use to certain commercial areas depending on the zoning. So illuminated and digital signs are largely prohibited in residential and rural areas because of light pollution. Light pollution is unwanted or excessive artificial light. Too much light can impact ecological systems and human health. They're also prohibited because of safety and road glare. Road glare is the excessive brightness that can cause visual discomfort, especially when driving in wet conditions or in rural areas at higher speeds. And then there's the loss of dark skies that may also be important to rural homeowners or cottages who move to the rural areas to escape the urban environments. Also for aesthetic reasons, a lot of people don't find necessarily the signs attractive or the brightness of the signs attractive, especially in rural landscapes. However, by not allowing them, we do recognize that the digital signs may make it more difficult for drivers not to be able to locate rural businesses during the evening or nighttime hours. So we did do a jurisdictional scan, and Colchester, they don't allow illuminated signs in residential areas, and some commercial zones permit illuminated signs with limits. For example, signs can be internally illuminated or illuminated through the use of shielded down lighting, but such illumination shall not flash. So basically, they don't allow for flashing or anything that's distracting for drivers. West Hants, signs that incorporate flashing and illumination moving parts are not permitted in any zone. No illuminated signs for home-based businesses. No person shall erect a sign with lights external to the sign itself or illuminate an area outside of any building or structure unless the illumination is directed away from the adjoining properties and any adjacent street. And some commercial zones do not permit illuminated wall signs. In Woodville, they don't allow any illuminated signs in any of the zones. And in Cumberland County, signs in the downtown commercial zone shall not be backlit or internally illuminated except for those neon exposed tubes. Signs by reason of size, location, content, coloring, or manner of illumination obstruct the vision of drivers, obstruct or detract from the visibility or effectiveness of any traffic sign or control device on a public streets or roads are not permitted in any zone. And there's no digitally or internally illuminated signs are permitted in residential zones in Cumberland County either. So we've prepared two alternatives for the consideration of Planning Advisory Committee. We will note that if we move forward with permitting digital and illuminated signs in the rural use north zone, the signs would then be permitted in all the communities, including areas where dense residential development and cottages may be located. So it could be located in Walton, you might have digital signs, or it could be located in Burncoat Head where there's cottages. There may be existing illuminated signs already in the rural use north zone that are considered kind of non-conforming or grandfathered because they were in place before the adoption of the 2023 planning documents. And so the first option is to direct staff to maintain the current regulations, and the second option is to direct staff to amend the land use bylaw to permit illuminated and digital signs in the rural use north zone as part of the 2026 plan review. So we'd create those regulations as part of the 2026 plan review and adopt it as part of that document. Maitland Heritage Conservation District. So the reason this direction or motion was brought forward was because the Maitland Fire Auxiliary wanted to install an externally lit sign, but it was not permitted in the Heritage Conservation District or the Rural Use North Zone. So this report only addresses the land use bylaw regulations, but if council wants to permit internally illuminated signs in the Heritage District, then bylaw P1100 Maitland Heritage Conservation District bylaw has to be amended. Planning staff are planning to bring forward a report to Planning Advisory Committee at a future date regarding the review of the Heritage Frontage Conservation District bylaw, and council could pass a separate motion directing staff to address internally illuminated and digital signs as part of that review. So, as I mentioned, we have the two motions, is to maintain or to draft amendments as part of the 2026 plan review to permit the illuminated signs in the rural use north zone. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. I'm going to move alternative motion number 1 to maintain the illuminated and digital signage regulations for the rural use north zone. And just for, background, I know in my community, it's not an illuminated sign, but there is a property developed recently who put up a lot of lights around the outside of their property. It's like daylight at night, and that has caused a lot of consternation in the community. And I think that the majority of folks, I think there's an ability to put up reflective signs or something like that, and so I move alternative 1 to maintain the illuminated and digital signage regulations for the rural use north zone.
It's been moved in second for alternative motion number 1. It's on the screen, Counselor, so. Oops. Counselor Rhino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be supporting the motion because I have had several businesses and others approach me wanting the fact that they could have illuminated signs. Now, I do agree with flashing signs, or some of these signs can pose a little bit of hazard, but I must bring out, I've got more complaints with the new Nova Scotia Powers yard light now that is severely worse than any illuminated sign would bring out there, and I've had several complaints on that. But it seems to me unfair. I understand. I brought up about the internally lit sign that's in Kennecott, and I know what that was there before the land use bylaw, blah, we can't do anything with it. But it makes it very hard to tell that to somebody and say, well, Kennecott can have it down there, we would like one. Well, they were grandfathered. Well, people don't accept that. I think if we had picked up motion number 2, we could have adjusted it so and put parameters around, illumination and things like that. I think it would have been fairer for everybody, and I will not be supporting the motion.
Is that all, Counselor?
Yep.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also will not be supporting the motion for similar reasons that Councillor Rhino mentioned. I mean, some of these illuminated signs in some areas, they turn them off when their businesses are done for the day. And there's been some comments about extreme lighting around buildings and infrastructure. That's for safety and security. We can't get away from that. You go to any meeting with the RCMP or anybody about how to protect your property, illumination is the number 1 thing they say, right? Make it look like daylight all the time. Nobody's going to want to go in and steal your stuff. I also agree that if we had made it part of the plan review, we could have put some more parameters around it. And I didn't see any consultation or any reach out to local businesses on their feelings or their wishes in this. So for that reason, I will not support the motion.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden Rolston.
Yeah, speaking in support of the motion, I know that East Hants is considered a leader in many areas, having seen the jurisdictional scan and what happens in residential areas all around us. That's not an area that I particularly want to become a leader in. I think it would bring more problems than benefit. If the commercial areas in the rural use north area become larger and greater and it becomes a more pressing issue, I'd certainly be happy to look at it again now. But at this point in time, there was no zoning there for decades and decades, and there was no need for signs, and people managed. And I guess my feeling is we live in the rural area, and I personally like to see the stars at night. Most people that I know like to see the stars at night. And as I said, if their businesses develop to the point that it's something that might be needed more, I'd be prepared to look at it again. But at this time, I'm happy with the status quo. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Councilor Musa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the area when it was unzoned, like staff came up with some residential zones that could protect the citizens of those areas from something like that, but the councilors of the area didn't want to lose anything from the RU2 zone, and I don't blame them for that, but now the businesses are losing something they need to run their business. So you cannot treat everybody the same, I know, but like, I can't see anybody putting a sign in the middle of the residential area. But if something like that happened, I think we should be looking back at the zoning back there and see if they want some strictly residential like we have. I think it's the best idea. I wouldn't be supporting that motion for now because businesses are struggling now and they need any idea and any mean to make themselves shown, especially in a rural area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston?
Just for clarity, the request that came in that drove this request and report was not from a business, if I'm correct. It was from the Ladies Auxiliary of the Maitland Fire Department.
That's correct.
Is correct? Thank you.
Is that all, Warden?
That's all.
Nobody left wishing to speak? We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed with a vote of 7-5 with Councilors Dixon, Hebb, Musa, Rhino, and Perry voting nay. Thank you, Debbie, for that report. Last item on the agenda is zoning confirmation letters report. Leanne, you can begin when you're ready. Okay, sorry. It wasn't on the original sheet, that's all. It was passed through this evening. Okay, I'll get it from the screen, thank you. Okay, Leanne, you can begin, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the December 2024 regular meeting, council passed a motion directing staff to prepare a report on the potential exemption and refund of the $75 fee required to obtain a municipal zoning confirmation letter that is now required under the Provincial Short-Term Rental Registration Act. So the province of Nova Scotia introduced regulations for short-term rentals across the province and now requires that all owners and operators of short-term rentals to register under the Nova Scotia Short-Term Rentals Registry. So these regulations came into effect September 30th of 2024. And as part of the provincial registration, short-term rental operators are required to provide proof of compliance with municipal land use bylaw for short-term rentals. And it is under municipal discretion what type of compliance that looks like. So a zoning confirmation letter or development permit are some of the options that they accept. So the Nova Scotia Short-Term Rental Registration Act short-term rentals must register if their accommodation is 28 days in a row or less. So registration is not required for long-term accommodation, so year-to-year, month-to-month leases that are more than 28 days. Accommodations at campgrounds that are not roofed, so campsites where tents and RVs are located, and accommodations that are only for temporary workers. So again, as part of the new regulations, hosts must confirm that their accommodation complies with municipal land use bylaw regulations. The province has indicated to us that this is a one-time letter that the hosts have to receive or obtain, and it's not something they have to get every single year, so they can reuse their same letter when they reapply each year. And it's section 6(1)(e) of the regulations that state confirmation from the municipality that the accommodation the applicant seeks to register complies with applicable land use bylaws. So East Hants does not specifically regulate short-term rentals. However, as part of the process to ensure compliance, the development officer does review each property to ensure it's zoned accordingly for residential use and there's no outstanding bylaw violations against the property. So currently, any request that comes in that's related to zoning confirmation or compliance, including those letters or requests for short-term rentals, are done through the issuance of a zoning confirmation letter. Other municipal units may provide other forms of compliance to the province, depending on how short-term rentals are regulated across each municipality. So in some cases, they are regulated under the land use bylaw or through a licensing bylaw. In these instances, development permits or other regulatory approvals may be required from the respective municipality, and then that can be used as a proof of compliance. And typically, there are fees for those types of permits through other municipalities as well. So in East Hants, there's a $75 fee for a zoning confirmation letter. So this table indicates the number of zoning confirmation letters for short-term rentals since the new regulations came into effect. So pretty much in the last year, we've issued 77 zoning confirmation letters for short-term rentals. For refunding zoning confirmation letters, so typically all the requests that we get for short-term rental letters are received through email and have been received through email. And when refunds are requested, they are typically processed and issued with a check. The refunds would then be mailed directly to the short-term rental host. And to ensure the refunds are being sent to the correct address, confirmation of mailing addresses would need to be required for each host. So this process would involve both planning and the finance department, as each refund would have to be done individually. And it may be quite challenging to reestablish contact with each short-term rental host in order to process these refunds, which may result in either delays or hosts not receiving their refund. So the requirement, again, to provide the proof of compliance is a one-time letter. Hosts do not have to receive the letter each year. And so currently the requests we are receiving are for new short-term rental operators. So most short-term rentals have already obtained their letter and are operating as usual. So staff are recommending that no change be made to the current process and requirement to issue a zoning confirmation letter for short-term rental hosts in order to meet the provincial requirement and to not issue refunds to those hosts who have obtained a letter. The fee that's currently charged for a zoning letter is used for staff time and resources to produce each letter. So the recommendation is to make no changes to the current requirement for zoning confirmation letter and the fees associated with obtaining a zoning confirmation letter. For the alternatives, if PAC and council wish to refund all zoning confirmation letters, there would be an amendment required to our municipal fee policy indicating that the zoning confirmation letters would be exempt. And the second alternative would be amending the fee policy to exempt zoning confirmation letters from the $75 fee moving forward from now. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Leanne. Councilor Rhino?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I brought this up several while back because I was approached by several bed and breakfast owners in the area who felt it was an additional cost and struggle for them to pay this $75. you know, in our area, tourism is a major employer down through that way. We want to encourage more tourist traffic, and yet we understand that this is a requirement made by the provincial government, but to me, it would go a long way for the municipality to say, yes, we support you, and here's your letter without a fee charge. So I'd be interested to see what my colleagues have to say about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. Do we currently have different regulations for venue rentals? And how is a venue taken? Because what's happened in two areas of my district, one on a lake, one in a rural setting, is people are listing a property on VBRO, Airbnb, and it's not as a short-term rental, it is as a venue, like have your wedding here, have your bachelorette party here, have your this party here, and which means every weekend it's being filled, those areas are being filled with not a family or people on vacation, it's a raging celebration every weekend right in the middle of a residential area. Close to neighbors that enough that they're complaining that it's had effect on, you know, farms next door in one instance, and also directly next to other houses and the garbage being left and, you know, things like that. So do we have anything in our bylaws that prohibit the use of a residential property as a venue versus a short-term rental?
Oh, sure.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So when you say venue rental, people are they're staying there overnight, but then they're also hosting a wedding? Is that what's happening?
In one location, they are having the wedding and everybody stays on site. And in another location, it's advertised as a venue rental for your bachelorette party, your this and that. And they've taken the place and they've expanded it and built it in such a way that, you know, you can accommodate 20 people at a dinner table, you can do that, and they can all do different things. And it's on a private road, and the residents are like, you come down and there's only room for parking 4 vehicles, but the cars are lined up and down, and you know, the parties go way late into the night and things like that, and they're just saying, like, it's different than the other 3 Airbnbs in the same road where people come in, they park their cars, they enjoy the property, they tour around Nova Scotia, and they come back. It's vacation rental. This is almost like a rotating party every weekend for 2 to 3 days from the time of June right to probably next weekend, probably the last one.
So I think in the first case, that would be a short-term rental. People are staying there overnight. In the second case, that sounds like a special event. You know, we have a permitting process for that. But again, if they're not over the threshold in terms of the number of people, they wouldn't require a permit. So
Yeah.
now, if it's a permanent, ongoing thing, I don't know at what point it trips over into a actual commercial activity, but something I guess maybe we should look at in the plan review.
Yeah, because it's something that I think the majority of short-term rentals throughout my area, most of the rural area, are used for what they're intended, right? There is no hotels throughout I don't think there's a hotel in our whole municipality. We have campgrounds and a few B&Bs, and that's it. So, you know, that short-term rental is vital for our tourism, economic driver within a lot of communities. But some of these other things, you know, when, you know, you have this happening on an undersized lot, 9 to 10 feet away from a permanent residence of somebody, it becomes quite the nuisance, right? So I don't know if we have to look if there's some way of regulating that beyond, and there was the worries this summer especially, because firewood was provided on site and there was a fire pit there, right? Even though there's a fire ban, who pays the fine? The people there or the people on the property that provided all the materials, right? So certain things like that, I think as we have more of these in our municipality, we might have to look at in the plan review, figuring a way to protect the residents from, you know, large disturbances, because 99% of the short-term rentals, I have not heard any problem with anybody. It's you know, the ones and twos, and some of these people own like 10 to 12 short-term rentals in an area. So anyways, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Musa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember we have a lot of private roads in our area, and those people are paying taxes for roads, and the roads are not being, I'm coming to a different subject now, so. And they've been charged administration fee, and the cause is staff time, and we could not eliminate that because staff time have to be paid for by somehow. So I can't see how can we do it for businesses that are making, like, they're not called businesses, but they're making money of that, while the resident that only live in their home and they don't make any money have to pay administration fee, have to pay staff time. I think it should be equal everywhere in the municipality, and I'm gonna move the recommended motion, like, make no change to the current requirement for a zoning confirmation letter and the fees associated with obtaining a zoning confirmation letter.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor. So it's been first and second on the recommendation, it's on the screen. Warden Rolston?
Thank you. And this kind of reflects a little bit, and I'm going to support the motion, but it kind of reflects on some of the anomalies in Nova Scotia, because if I understand this correctly, cottages are short-term rentals and would be required to pay the one-time $75 fee, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if the owner is renting it out on Airbnb or VRBO, they'd be required to obtain a
But
letter.
if they're advertising in other ways, they wouldn't?
If the platforms that they're listing on, they require a registration number. That number comes from the province, and in order to get that number, there's the list of things they have to comply with, one of
Okay.
which being this compliance letter.
Well, like I said, the anomaly being that if I own a cottage or cottages and rent them, I'm taxed commercially on those cottages. But if I own some Airbnbs and I'm renting them, guess what? I'm taxed residentially on them. So it's a disconnect to me, I guess, that particular thing. But this particular motion to charge, if it was $75 per cottage or per Airbnb that was owned, or every year, but $75 for a one-time fee for staff to do the research and prepare the letter, I don't think it's an unreasonable cost when you consider that these folks are going to make hopefully going to make a decent living or some money from these properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Nobody wishing to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed with a vote of 11-1, with Councillor Rhino voting nay. Thank you, Leanne and Debbie, for your reports. The last report is draft survey response, agricultural planning, from the director. And you can begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. But before we do that, I should go back. I think I misspoke when we were talking about Debbie's report on the nursing home and the road issue. We're not actually going to public hearing next week. You were being asked to give first reading. So technically, I guess there would be an opportunity to change or add something. But given that you've already held a public information meeting and we know the landowner is quite anxious to get moving on this, you'd be back to square one if you decide to stop now. But technically, you're not at public hearing, you're at first reading. So you would have the opportunity if you wanted to direct staff to add something to that. But I think it would add at least a couple of months to the process because we'd have to go prepare the amendments, hold another public information meeting. So just wanted to clarify that with the councillor. All right.
Just, council's okay with that explanation? Okay, thank you, John. You can begin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is in relation to an online survey that the Department of Agriculture is circulating, and they specifically want to hear from Nova Scotia municipal councils with respect to agricultural land planning. And unfortunately, the response is due tomorrow, so that's why we're here tonight, to try and make sure you're okay with this. And what I did, I went online and I went through and I filled out the survey, but I haven't submitted it. So I guess tonight, an opportunity to edit if you so choose. And so the first few questions are pretty straightforward. Do you currently have a plan? And I would say, yes, we do. Our municipal planning strategy. When was it adopted or last significantly updated? And I would say the last significant update would have been the 2016 plan review, so 10 years ago. And the next review is set to begin in 2026. Engagement, when you engage the community, producers and other interested parties on agricultural planning, what are the key concerns raised? And I think what we hear most often, the first one is private property rights. When you have restrictive zoning, so especially with things when people want to build non-farm dwellings, that seems to come up the most. And secondly, it would be land use conflicts. I mean, modern agriculture can be noisy and raise dust and create odors, and we do get complaints about farms for that reason. And are there particular organizations that we have formed partnerships with or help facilitate discussions on agricultural land? And what came to my mind is our Agricultural Advisory Committee. So I pointed that out, that we have one, and it's set up to advise the PAC and council where land use matters affect agricultural land. And the membership includes councillors, farmers, citizens at large, a representative from the Department of Agriculture, and actually I'll add to this, there's also a representative from the Federation of Agriculture there as well. So a pretty broad spectrum in terms of agricultural community. This one I might need a little bit of help with. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the least important and 10 the most important, how important is the protection and preservation of agricultural land to your municipality? And just based on the discussions and all the other priorities we hear about, I put it at a 4 right now. I mean, if it was me personally, I would put it much higher based on my own views. But in terms of what I've heard from council over the years, I, at least for now, set it at a 4. And then what are the highest priority uses of land in your municipality? And I would say, you know, we're always trying to attract commercial development to increase the commercial assessment, and of course there's always a need for housing, so commercial and residential are the 2 that I set there. And it's just 8 questions, so that's the survey, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that report. Councillor Garden-Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. So I just want to get this right. When you're saying how important is the protection and preservation of agricultural land to your municipality, you mean that overall in everything that we are striving for, you know, that agricultural land would only rate a 4 out of 10?
With respect to land use, and again, you know, we went through that whole discussion with the plant update where agricultural land preservation was not extended to the current unzoned area, so that's probably why I pulled it down as low as I put it.
Okay, just that, you know, when I think of agricultural land in its own entity, kind of, it is, you know, it is very important. It definitely plays a very important role, so just 4 out of 10, just that general number of 4 out of 10 seems, for me, it seems a little low, but see what other councillors have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you. Through you to the presenter. I'm also the same as the previous councillor. I think 4 is low. I'd be thinking more like the 7 to 8 area for the value to us and everything like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Warden McPhee.
Thank you, Chair. Just on a personal basis, I don't think there's any more important use of our properties or land than agricultural. So I would, on a personal basis, put it at a 10 as being the absolute most important. But I know that's probably not acceptable, but, I think it has to be way above 5, which would be the mean. So, I suggest somewheres between 5 and 10, maybe a 7. I'd be comfortable with, but I think it's a very important, I can't think of a more important use than agricultural myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Councilor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the number 8, John, commercial and residential. So do you mean that our priority is this use, or what had been used, what's been used here now?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the question was, what are the highest priority uses of land in your municipality? And I would say, based on our discussions about zoning and ensuring that we have commercial land available and all those kinds of things, that's why I put commercial number 1.
So, okay. I thought we could fit something, because half the land in East Hants are forestry, so I don't know where that will fit in there, so. I know it's not priority, but it's needed for the whole industry, for the new housing that we need and stuff. So I think that's very important to tell the government that we have a lot of forest land in our municipality. And on the one before, on a scale 1 to 10, I don't think we should go very high, because the government might come back and tell us, okay, your priority, and you have a lot of land that has been used like for light agriculture, and it's not zone agriculture. So how you gonna put like that's a higher priority for you, right? Because when we did the rezoning, like we managed not to overload this zone. So I can see, I think we should be around the 4 and 5.
Is that all, Councilor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I completely agree with Councilor Musa. We made a stance as a council when we did the zoning of the on-zoned area that we were not going to make properties that were receiving agricultural tax benefits agricultural land. We zoned it as RU2 to allow them to have commercial and residential uses on that property and not be restricted by residential. So we have definitely have it as a 4, I would say, because we have given that area and those people that are receiving that benefit a huge advantage over the ones that are already zoned agricultural and go by the agricultural restrictions in the rest of the municipality. So I definitely do believe commercial and residential has been the highest priorities of use. And we do value agricultural land, but we value the people's ability to build commercial and residential more, hence the RU2 zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Deputy Warden Rolston. Oh, my apologies. Warden Rolston.
That's okay. Yes, I won't dwell on it. I agree with Councilor Moose and Councilor Perry. I think 4 does support what we decided with the recent zoning in the rural area, because you could have searched a long time and never found anyone in the Hants North area who supported agricultural zoning, and that's a fair amount of people. And I understand that there's zoning in the other areas, but we're still to this day finding errors that were made when that land was zoned, and that was incorrectly zoned agricultural. And we did just tweak our plan to allow the folks in those areas to do more farm-based business, and came up with ways that they could, perhaps do family housing or something like that. So I'm not saying that agricultural land isn't important, but I read that as to being what's most important, what we're working on in our municipality now. And I don't think there's any way that we're expending a majority of our time or anything on the agricultural land. we're more concerned with commercial and residential and housing. And ever since I've been here, we've been working to try and increase our commercial tax base. So I know where John got that, and I understand why he chose a 4. And, I think that's, when you look at the amount of agricultural land that's in the municipality versus the other land, I just think that's a fair number right now. And I'll tell you right now, I don't want the province to come back and tell us that we have to go back out to those people in those community halls again anytime soon. So I agree. I think the survey is well done, and I support the answers that have been filled in. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden Ralston. Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair, I think, John, your report is pretty accurate, but just listening to everybody else talk, it sounds like the 4 might not be the exact figure. And I can only speak for me personally. The question is asking about the importance of protecting agricultural land. To me personally, it's more than a 4. It's a provincial statement of interest, so it's important to the province. I do understand there's got to be some fairness and some give and take type of thing, but I wouldn't rate it a 4 as compared to using it for housing and commercial. I would rate it probably, like some of the others said, a 7. I'd suggest maybe we go around, get a number from each councillor and take the average. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rhino.
Well, in my opinion, I think we should stay at a 4. I mean, our director has talked to a lot of people, and, he set his personal opinion aside. He's come up with a fair number. I think it's right. I'm not of the trusting nature of these surveys sent out by the provincial government, because I'm really not sure how they'll be used to come back at us. So I think 4 is a reasonable number, and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Ralston.
Thank you. I'm all for consensus, but I'm not in favor of going around the room and everybody put a number in and take an average, because all it would do would be to take a couple of people to put a 10 in there, and your average could be pretty skewed. So for those reasons, I've listened to the conversation, and, perhaps a few years down the road, perhaps we'll be putting more time and energy into reviewing agricultural land and doing more for it, but I don't think we're there right now, and I am going to move that the survey be submitted as presented.
It's moved in second. Thank you, Warden. Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair, I understand what the warden's saying and taking an average. That could work both ways. The side that's picking 4 could take 1. If I said 7, I'm not going to go with 10. And if we just vote with this, that's basically disregarding what some others might have an opinion of. So this will go through a vote. Either everybody's going to vote for a 4 or they're not. But that's my comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know everyone here have priority for agriculture in here, but what made it 4 is a restriction, and the only one zone have. Every other municipality have AR1, AR2, AR3, which one of them is very restrictive, the other one. So if we want to put that up to 7, we have to do something else before we do that, and we gotta go with different agricultural zone, like for the farm that making money and getting grant, that could be the AR zone, and the other one that have a small hay field and just making enough probably to have some hay for his cows or something, that should not have as much restriction as the one that making money and getting access to a lot of government grants. So I think before we should move that forward, I think we should do something else before that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Nobody left to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the vote is passed with Deputy Warden McPhee and Councillor Tingley voting nay. Thank you, staff and director, for those comments and reports. That concludes Planning Advisory Committee for this evening. We're scheduled for an adjournment and break. So we'll come back at 8:15, if that's okay with council, so we can finish. Thank you, Public Member Harvey, for coming. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Before doesn't matter. It's gonna be
Okay.
very short.
I'll leave it up to the chair for corporate and residential. So we're now on break.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we're going to call Corporate and Residential Services Committee to order. This is actually a continuation of our committee from Executive Committee Day on Tuesday. So the first item, also I just want to add that we'll be adding an in-camera possible legal item after the, as the second item of this committee. And first item is the East Hants Public Transit Business Plan Financial Analysis Update with Graham. And I'll get you on there. Go ahead.
There you go. Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Madam Chair, good evening, councillors. As mentioned, we're here tonight to present you the financial analysis that council has requested on the potential East Hants public transit. So back in December 2024, we presented to you the business plan for transit, and at the time we looked at the different routing options, the overall costs, and council asked staff to come back with a financial analysis that outlined the impact to the tax base and burden, and then to also provide some examples of what that would look like on individual households. So staff have compiled that for you, and we're here to present that this evening. So for this financial analysis, we've working with the finance department, we've developed 3 scenarios for your consideration. That basically includes the startup as well as the capital and ongoing capital reinvestment that would be required from the municipality to ensure the service going forward. Those 3 scenarios that we've presented or are presenting this evening for council's consideration are basically scenarios that outline, first of all, the operating and capital cost of the entire service as it would be funded just solely by East Hants. And then we've also done 2 additional scenarios, one where we do a 50-50 split with the federal government under the RTSF application that we submitted on behalf of council in terms of the capital costs, and then an additional scenario where the capital costs assumes an 80% contribution from the federal government. But in both of those, scenario 2 and 3, we've assumed that East Hants will continue to bear the full cost of the operating cost. Sorry, the full operating cost. And so in these scenarios, the general tax rate and the urban service rate have been examined and outlined. And we've presented an option whereby the urban service rate, we're showing you both a 1 cent and a 2 cent increase on each of those 3 scenarios. So there's a lot of numbers, so bear with me here. So this is scenario 1, and scenario 1 assumes a fully 100% funded East Hants service. And so you can see across, I'm going to use my cursor here if you guys can see it. Essentially across the top here we have the estimated net expenditure by year, and we've just sort of presented a 5-year window for council's consideration. Down below it we then have the general tax rate and the with a 1 cent increase to the USR, which is here, and then the general tax rate plus a 2 cent increase to the USR, and then over on this side of this chart or this table, sorry, we have the example assessments the example tax burden to the household at sort of 3 different average assessments that you can see for each of these scenarios. So just sort of to walk you through it a little bit, you can see here the general in year 1, we have a general tax rate increase for this scenario of just over 1.09, or sorry, 1.09, and then on the USR we see a 1.0 cent increase, and then you can see that incrementally increase across the 5-year window we've presented you with as it goes. In terms of the expected tax burden on this scenario, so this would be the GTR plus a 1 cent USR increase. You can see here that you're looking at a GTR increase on a $300,000 assessed home of $32, and then an additional $30 on the USR. So in total, you're looking at a just over $62 increase to that tax bill. And then as your assessments go increase, then so does the contribution all the way up to $100. So you're basically looking at an increase between $60 and $100 on that scenario.
Could I just get a clarification on these rates? In year 1, $1.09, year 2, $1.49?
No,
1.49 cents.
Okay, 1.09 cents, 1.49 cents. Is this cumulative? Like, is it gonna be 1.09 cents in year one, and then in year two, another 1.49 cents on top of that? And then in year three, another 1.36 cents on top of that? Or is it just gonna fluctuate between 1.09 and 1.17 throughout the?
I would maybe ask for clarification through the manager of finance, but my understanding is that those are the established rates.
If they're cumulative, we're looking at 6 or 7 cents by the end of 5 years. So I just need to understand.
I think that's. There you go, you're on.
Through the chair, so if you see at the top the estimated net expenditures by year, that is an additional 431,000 in year one, an additional 594 in year two. Each year it's an additional amount, so that is an extra 1.0, that's an additional cent and a half. On top of that, it is cumulative.
So every year.
Yes.
So by the end of year 5, you're between 6 and 7 cents in this scenario.
No.
The costs are going up each year.
Yeah.
By year 5, the cost will be $609,000 a year.
But what he just said is in year 1, it's gonna be an extra $431,903.
Oh, I see what you
In year 2, it's gonna be another $594,000 on top of that.
Estimated net expenditures by year.
Yeah, I misspoke.
Yeah,
That's
no,
the actual
okay, no,
cost
it's
per
not
year.
cumulative. Jordan, go ahead, yeah.
I wanna hear a numbers guy tell me that.
Yeah, I may have misspoke there. It's not cumulative.
It's not cumulative.
No.
Not, okay.
The rates vary.
Adam wants to.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So the bulk of the bump is the initial year to get your operating and capital, and then the costs are just incremental throughout the operating, right? So initially, council needs to raise that almost $500,000, and then each year as your operating costs go up in our modeling, it's a few percent each year as costs increase and whatnot. So it isn't 1 cent and then another additional cent to equal 2 cents. It's that 1 cent and then incremental each year. Just for clarity, because you need to raise your bulk operating to get the program off the ground, and then your operating costs are incremental.
So in year 2, you'd be going up another 0.4 of a cent from year 1.
Yes.
And then it would come down a bit in year 3. Okay, just needed to wrap my head around it so I knew.
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
And then, so as you can see with the GTR with a 2 cent increase, obviously the GTR goes down slightly. And you can see that play out again over the 5 years. And we're basically looking at $80 on a $300,000 assessed home all the way up to $135,000. And so this would be the fully 100% funded model by East Hants. The following two scenarios, same outline. We're going from 1.00 and change all the way up to, down to 0.9. And that basically looks like $60 all the way up again to $100, and then $78 all the way up to $130. So again, a very similar impact across this, but in this case, this would be 50% of the capital cost funded by East Hants and 50% funded by the federal government. So you can see kind of right off the hop, it's the capital cost, with the funding doesn't actually impact these scenarios all that much. It is the operating cost that is making up the bulk of that. And then in this scenario where we receive 80% funding for the federal government, you're looking at 0.95 and 1 cent all the way, again, dropping down to 0.75 and 1 cent. And you're looking at just over $58 on a 300,000, all the way up to just under $100. And then with a 2-cent increase on the USR and 0.57 on the GTR, and then again, sort of dropping as it goes, and you're raising, the tax burden to the household is about just under $80 and going all the way up to just about 130 here. So very similar scenarios very similar outcomes across all three scenarios. We wanted to present this information to you, first of all, because it was requested, but also to give council a sense of what this service will, how this will impact your tax base. And so before we proceed to the next step that council had asked us to go to, which was to go to public engagement, we really wanted to come back and sort of gauge your comfort level with these types of numbers before we go out to the public and present the service and ask for their feedback, which was what council had asked us to do in terms of the service and in terms of the tax burden to the households. So that's why we've presented this for you this evening, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Graham. And we'll start with Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff, in your tables and in the costing, was that done with zero growth over year in the municipality, or was there a number associated with growth to make those numbers fluctuate?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, it was done with a growth estimate, and I asked Jordan to maybe weigh in with the numbers, or the percentage, sorry.
Sure. Through the chair, we basically took the 1-cent raises for commercial and residential, and we did a percentage increase each year. We basically would take the 1-cent raises from the prior year minus from 2 years prior to that, get the percentage change, apply it to the next year, and we built up the 1-cent raises based on that, and that's how we determined.
Okay. So you forecasted a similar, like 7 to 8% growth in our general and commercial, or whatever the commercial tax income was coming in, continuing on for the next 5 years.
That's right. Based on past performance, I'll call it, we went into the future, which isn't always an ideal way to do it, but that's the best that we worked with what we could.
Okay.
And I just would add to that, it's like something to keep in mind is that, as these corridor developments build out, a lot of them, like these apartment buildings have a significant impact that we haven't really, fully assessed yet and can't fully assess until they sort of hit the tax roll, right? And so keep that in mind as well.
Oh,
what we're seeing now may not be what we see in the future. So.
Part of that's my next point, right? So my next point is growth. And transportation is a service no different than fire service, no different than police service. It's a service that is offered to the public to allow people to move and allow people to do different things. I see the definite benefits in transit, even though it doesn't touch my community at this point, but I definitely see the benefits in transit. But one of the things that you need when you have a transit is density nodes. And I do not believe our current regulations restricting height to the point it has in the areas that this will be affected is proper. If you look at a lot of small areas, you're looking at 6 to 7 stories in those cluster of apartment buildings, which create the optimal transportation node to fill those buses and get things moving and get a lot more people using a transit system. So, I mean, if we're gonna move ahead with transit, we also have to look at our density calculations and moving to a manner that we allow development to happen to go with transit rather than our development being stuck in one spot and trying to get transit there, because those transit nodes and density areas are needed. And you see it even being done right now in Halifax and Dartmouth. They're completely rejigging certain neighborhoods and increasing density in certain nodes to allow transit to have a better effect in those areas. And spreading out 3-story or 4-story apartment buildings just isn't the way to get that density that you need to have a transit cycle. And the last question I have is, with this regional to provincial, I don't know what the program's called now, it's changed. Is it the regional transit plan or whatever? Has there been any talk at that working group? I guess this question would be more for John because he sits on that working group. Has there been talk for funding to allow expansion of transit and things to happen? Because I know they're talking about light rail, I know they're talking about ferries, and they're talking about all these other things. But is there been any talk about funding municipal transit programs to link them in this manner at that working group?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, Graham, through you, Madam Chair, Graham's had a more recent conversation with Link Nova Scotia.
Okay.
But to my knowledge, and when I was there was no specific funding programs discussed.
Okay. Because I'm looking at we're looking at 50% federal, 80% federal, right? The province has to play a role in this as well. And maybe it's an operational grant of a certain amount of money per year to help with the operations to link everything together, or they look at a joint operation thing where, when you're linked up, you can share maintenance bays or certain things like that. So there's still a lot of questions to go, but I definitely think one of the most important things is getting the public input, right? We can talk transit all we want, but if the public tells us they don't want it, then we go from there. So I thank you for the report. I thank you for how it's broken down. I know it's gonna be a hard sell for a lot of people to have, be paying for stuff on the general tax rate. But if you look 5-10 years down the road and how everything blows out and somebody can go from Truro to Halifax, you can go from a lot of areas and get close to that system and use it rather than have it just be right in your community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is,
Can I just interrupt?
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair? Sorry, my apologies. I actually forgot there was another page to my report.
oh, continue on that.
It's been a long day. So I just very quickly, if I may, and sort of thank you, Councillor Perry, for bringing that up, because it actually reminded me that I'd written something about that. So basically, keeping in mind that the proposed transit service did have a link from running outside of East Hants, running from sort of the Enfield all the way down to the airport to facilitate that. It's important for council to keep in mind that that type of moving outside of our jurisdiction would require a review with the URAB and an approval from HRM to sort of operate the system within that. And so that's just something to keep in mind. There is sort of, more to come on that if that were to go forward, and that was council's wish. We would have to sort of go down that road with them. But and sort of in counterpart to that, we have been in talks with the JRTA and Link Nova Scotia on the regional transportation plan, as Councillor Perry mentioned. And so there is an outline in the regional transportation plan for an intermunicipal fixed route service that runs basically from Truro to Halifax. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look through that plan. And it does have potential stop locations in the corridor and at the airport. And so that service, depending on timelines, it could potentially provide an opportunity to reduce the need for East Hants to potentially run all the way to the airport. We don't know. We don't know what their implementation timeline is on that. They don't seem to know yet when that service will be offered, or even the frequency may not even play out in a way that would allow us to reduce it. But there is the potential there, and I think it's important for council to understand that potential. And then. I highlighted the public engagement, but I didn't sort of elaborate on it. We have received a quote from WSP, who did the report for us to provide that public engagement service to council, and that would include a number of 3 engagement sessions and then an online survey that residents could complete. And we have a cost from them of approximately $15,000, which is budgeted within the transit plan budget and was done through council's budgeting process. So. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem, thank you. So next to speak is Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These public engagement, would they be one in each area? Corridor, Mount Uniacke and Hants North would, that's for the public to have an input on that? Is that the way you're planning?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we had asked for sort of a regional look at it. We hadn't actually defined which locations, but rather just that we wanted 3 in general.
Well,
so.
I'm afraid if we're gonna, if the vote is to put any cost on the general tax rate, that the people of District 5 will want to have their say. You know, I'm safe to say that probably 98 to 99% of those people will never use that transit system, and yet they're going to be forced to pay for it. And, you know, with the summer we've gone through and the drought conditions and people for paying water, with the cost of living going sky high and the amount of food, people just, you know, somebody may think, well, $20 or $35 or $40 for a year is not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. Well, it is to a lot of people in my area. So, and those are the people that I will be paying attention to, and I'm pretty sure right now that it probably won't be accepted well in the rural area. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair, I don't think I really have any questions. Most people have asked all the questions and made all the comments. So are you looking for a motion here tonight?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, the recommended motion is there on the screen. That Corporate and Residential Services recommends to Council to provide direction to proceed with public engagement for the proposed fixed route transit service.
Understood. Well, I could not recommend to at least consult with the public, so I'm going to move that Corporate and Residential Services recommends to Council to provide direction to proceed with public engagement for the proposed fixed route transit service.
Okay, moved and seconded. On before the motion are several speakers. Councillor Merriam.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Graham, for the report. I'm an active transit user currently myself. Feel very passionate about transit for that reason. And I did have a look at the regional transportation study, and other councillors might be interested in taking a look at a couple of pages, if you want to jot it down, page 89 and 95 in particular. This is, of course, talking about the passenger rail feasibility study, which you know, it's sort of conceptual stage right now, of course, but the pages that I mentioned, it does have wording like many actions will require funding support from all orders of government, and it's reiterated again from all orders, funding from all orders on page 95. So, you know, I couldn't agree more. Going out to a public hearing is great on our transit initiative. I just think it's important that as a council, we're cognizant that if the passenger rail feasibility study does actually lead to something, and we're asked to pony up for that in some degree with a potential stop in the corridor, that, you know, it's just good to be kind of on top of that, and hopefully, you know, we'll be involved in the consultative process when it comes to saying what we want on that front and how much it will cost if it does come to fruition. One question that I have is when the public engagement is done, and specifically with the online survey, I think it's been some time since we've gone out to the public asking for their input and feedback, and I would really value personally to have on an online questionnaire an open-ended question to say, essentially, tell us what you want your transit to look like. Because, you know, I think we're coming at it with some pretty good ideas in mind in terms of this is what we're proposing, but I think now's the time to find out what people want for transit. And, you know, I think, again, a long time has gone by since we've asked them that question before, and I think it will help us get a sense of what the user actually wants to see, and that might be different than what we have in mind. And now's the time to make changes if required. That's my opinion. And again, I'm supportive of the motion.
Is that all, Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak is Warden Ralston.
Thank you. Transit a subject that never goes away. My personal view on transit continues to be that we don't have the density yet to make it viable, but that's just my personal opinion. I don't object to going out to the public with it. I don't object to Councillor Merriam's question, but if we're going to ask that question, I think we also need to clearly ask the question, how much extra are you willing to pay on your taxes to fund your vision for transit? Because you could have folks there that would say, oh, I'd like to have a bus going to Truro 3 times a day and one going to Halifax 5 times a day. If you're asking them what they'd like to see, but I think they need to understand that there's a cost to that. Also, with contracting it out to WSP to do this public engagement, I'm a little concerned about that. Because I know what public engagement looks like in this municipality, in some places. And I would be afraid that the company who came up with the plan or whatever would see public engagement as going out and selling their plan to the public. And what my point in going to the public is that to get the real honest feedback, the public have to know the costs. And so this outfit has to understand that in order to answer the questions to the public and give them all the information. I may be shocked as can be. It may be the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I just have a feeling, I know people that live all over this municipality, and there are a fair number of people who pay very high taxes who wouldn't use transit. It may not just be the rural folks who say, I can't afford to pay anymore for something I'm not going to use. Maybe I'm wrong. And then again, the heavier users of transit, if it does come, are probably going to be your apartment renters and those folks who don't pay any taxes. Just saying. They don't, it's not going to matter to them because they don't have a tax bill that they're going to have to pay for this on. So it's a complicated thing. I don't object going to the public. I'd be very concerned. I'd want our staff to work very closely with this organization about what going to the public looks like. And I don't know if 3 meetings in the municipality are going to be enough. And yes, by God, there has to be one in the rural area, but that's a big area. And 1 meeting for people to clear schedules and try and get to, it's going to be challenging. So, folks aren't going to want to drive an hour from Walton to get to a meeting somewhere, or an hour from Maitland, or an hour from Center, or even South Rawdon. They could go Uniac way, that wouldn't be so bad, but it's going to be challenging to do it with 3 meetings, I think. And the other thing I'm going to say is we really have to be on, if we decide to go to the public, we really have to be on our communications game so that the public know it's coming. Because the public don't pick up on things like that easily. And it's not like we've got the weekly press anymore that we can put it in, or Shelley's Web anymore that goes to every household that we can put it in. It's going to be tough, and we're going to have to do a lot of legwork so that people know these meetings are coming. And I mean, put it in the high tides, put it in our newsletter, put it on our socials, but that's not enough. Somebody's going to have to travel around and tack up posters in every little store and fire hall or wherever, so that people will know that this is coming. If you want to get true feedback and not after the fact say, well, I didn't know anything about this. And I make those comments not to be nasty, but just to say it's tough to consult with the public today. It's not easy, and I think we've really got to try to do it. And I think we do also have to be cognizant that there will be potential users of this who don't pay taxes. So they won't care how much the average tax bill is going to come up for it. So that's kind of a little bit of a danger of an open-ended question about what do you want. So it's challenging. I don't object to going to the public, but I think we'd better do a bang-up job on it. And the other thing, I'm just going to say, this just goes out 5 years. What's the average lifespan of a bus or a van or whatever we've settled on? Because although we may get federal funding or something to start this engine running, when it comes time to replace those assets, I don't know if that will still be there or if that's going to be, on us as well. So I do have concerns. Don't object to asking the public and seeing what they say, but I think we've really got to make sure that they have an opportunity and that we make sure as many people as possible engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. I'm just going to let Adam weigh in on this.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think I could touch on a few of the questions and comments from the warden there. So there is annual, in this model that you're seeing in front of you today, there's annual contributions back into capital. So there's not only the capital investment that needs to be made, we've allocated, I think it's just under 100,000 each year to go back into capital. The lifespan of the buses, I think it's around 10 years. So although this model is only showing you 5, there's still reinvestment into capital, and I may be off on that 10-year mark. So it will support some of the capital, but that is a long-term planning need, but we haven't been forgotten about it in our modeling. From the communications piece, I think it's important just to touch on that. Part of today is to listen to the conversation. The intent of using the previous consultants really from a data and the expertise level of they know our data and our report. We are still steering as an organization that communications process and developing it with them. We have some options outlined there, and absolutely we do intend to go into the rural area and into the Uniacke area and into the corridor area. We will have a full comms plan to go through that as part of the process. So we've heard some questions and comments from the councillors, but at the end of the day, we're still driving that engagement process. And our purpose today was to make sure that this group council is comfortable with the numbers before we go out to the public. So I think that touches on your comments and questions there. And I don't know if there's anything else that Graham wants to add in on that.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Next to speak is Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really understand where the councillors of the corridor are coming from. Maybe they see the need for a bus service in the area. But for me to accept that people in District 5 or the people in East Uniacke or something that will never use the bus here in the corridor, unless the one going to Mount Uniacke, that's a different story. But until one go to Mount Uniacke, I can't sell it to my people. And doing those public meeting and public information meeting, whatever they call, people don't go to there. But we're the one who's gonna be throwing rock at after it pass, and I'm paying for a bus I never use and stuff. Like, people don't go to those meetings, but they don't forget that they're paying that fees that you put on. So I think we have a very good solution for that. Like, we've been doing that stuff for 2 years now. Like, every year we have access, and then, like, we have surplus. We could use that surplus instead of GTR, and the area rate will stay on the area rate, whatever you want to put. But I don't think anybody in a rural area where they're barely supporting their fire department are going to put 1 cent on their taxes to go to a bus instead of giving it to their fire department. That's how I see it. I don't know. Probably the councillor of the area agree with me. They're underfunded for their fire department, and if they have extra money to pay, they will pay it for their fire department before they put it on a bus route. So my point is, to sell it to the public, I think we have to go with a different formula. Like, instead of the GTR, we do whatever we did with every other project. Take some money of the surplus, take whatever you need for the corridor area, and spread some out to the other area. Everybody's happy. You get whatever you want. I think that's the best way to go for it. Because I don't see a point that me voting for anybody, even if the public agree with it, I wouldn't agree with it. That somebody who never use the bus is gonna put a 1 or 1.5 cents on their taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next to speak is Councillor Rhino.
I want to keep this short. I agree with what the warden said. I agree with what Councilor Musa said. No, I'm not happy with the numbers and probably will never, ever be. But I will support this motion to let it go forward to the public, so the public can, so that all councilors will hear what is out there in rural Mount Uniacke and of course in the quarter area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And next to speak is Councillor Head.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support this for now. For me, if go to a meeting, there's certain things that I'm gonna be looking for at that meeting. You know, how much is it gonna cost? Is it gonna affect me? Am I gonna use this bus? Where's the bus gonna go? Where is it gonna pick me up? What's the route? Is that kind of stuff gonna be presented in the discussion?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, all of that information. So this would be a presentation of like the full transit plan, including the outlined cost in here, the example tax burdens on the different assessment rates and all of that stuff, so that the public can fully understand not just the financial impact, but also the benefits to those communities that are being serviced with it. And also to make sure that we're highlighting that this is your first route. There are potential for other future routes that could service other areas as it goes forward, but we have to start somewhere with a service. And it has to be, you typically start with a one route circular service that services your most dense area, and then you build your routes off of that. And so all of that, and which is in the transit plan, would be presented as part of these public engagements. And the survey, like the online survey, will focus more on what the warden was highlighting, which is sort of more around, what's your view on transit? How do you want it to go? And we'll seek the feedback in that manner, as well as outlining those costs and again, the burden on the households that would go forward.
And no, that's acceptable to me, because I know that, just if somebody's out there, they're gonna look at that route and it's important to say, well, it's not there for me yet, but maybe a couple of years down the road it could be. That's the kind of stuff I like to see out there, so that it may not benefit them now, but it may down the future. So as long as they got an understanding of that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Warden, if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to speak.
Okay.
So I agree with Councillor Musa in that this is going to be a very hard sell to the rural areas, but don't assume that it's not going to be a hard sell to the corridor areas as well. When we talk about getting more density or, higher level apartment buildings to try and be able to support this, that can possibly potentially mean more people using it who aren't paying for it. So that's just one way of looking at it. I honestly, while this is probably not great from a financial point of view, I honestly feel like the only way to truly get a proper and accurate idea of what the municipality as a whole feels about this is to send out to mail out surveys. I realize that is very costly, but in the big scheme of the picture of the costliness of this whole project, I can't help but feel when you talk about having 3 meetings versus having online surveys, I just don't think that you are covering everybody in the municipality. Not everybody has the ability to be able to reach out to us and get their opinions heard just from those 2 ways. So that's my feeling on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Thanks.
Okay. You want me to hand the chair back or carry it forward?
Carry it forward.
All right, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just a comment, because I heard people talk about people who don't pay for it will use it. If you are a renter in a building the owner of that building receives a very, very large tax bill, and part of your rent is to pay the taxes. So everybody who lives in an apartment building, in one way or another, pays the taxes on that building. All the people who are renting are paying their portion for everything that they receive and all the services they receive in the municipality. So I just want to make sure that for any of the public out there knows that everybody in apartments is paying their fair share because it's passed on to them by the landlord owners. And as far as the mail out goes, if Canada Post ever goes back to work, maybe, I don't know. So that's the other issue. But I do agree, this has to go to the public, and I don't know if just the one engagement, the one round of going to all areas will be enough, because I think there's an awful lot of information to get here in the presentation, and the feedback that will come is gonna lead to more questions and more questions. So I definitely do think that as we do this, it's all a process, and this is the first step. And then when we get those results, we might have to go to a second round of consultation in some ways, because there might be more questions arise from the presentations and the numbers and different things. So I just think we really have to keep an open mind as we go forward in that our data collection might have to go beyond one round. Thank you.
Councillor Hebb. Trying.
Through you to staff, just one more question. Those costs there is the setup and the running of the system that you have there?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's
Yes.
both the operating and the
Yeah,
capital
okay.
costs.
Is there any thought in there, maybe there is there a user pay system?
So this would include the fare revenue, like the user still pays a fare to travel on the transit system.
Above and beyond the taxes and stuff? like that?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. This whole system involves a fare system.
I figured it was, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
CAO.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I think the public consultation piece is really important in this, and Councillor Perry picked up on the Canada Post is currently not doing your community mail delivery, so it'd be difficult to get something out sort of on paper to engage, like we've done. Our last example of that would have been the facilities master plan, which worked out really well. So providing that they're still off, we can probably talk to the consultants about using our webinar platform to do some kind of digital engagement with folks who can join online to a presentation or two, as well as having your local area ones. But if we had, I assume we have budget enough to talk to them about that, we could also add some of those. So those are really great for accessibility. People who can't get out to halls or wherever we decide to have these. And they're also, it doesn't matter where you live in the community, you could join a webinar or two based on sort of getting that same information out there so more people can access it. So we can talk to the consultants about where the best method of doing that. But hearing the conversation tonight, I think that's probably one of the solutions to getting more information out to a group. We can hold webinars to up to, I think it's 500 people or 1,000 people. So we could certainly make those arrangements.
I've got Councillor Rhino, followed by Councillor Garden Cole, followed by Councillor Musa. So Councillor Rhino.
Just a quick one, I don't want to belabor this, but when approximately would the public meeting start in the rurals and all over, I guess is the question. And I would, Councillor Perry mentioned something, if we're going into this and we're slightly going into the winter season, I'm afraid that one meeting in a rural area or one meeting in a quarter area or one meeting may not be enough. I don't think it will be enough now after listening to the Councillor Perry, and I agree with him there. But when are they going to start?
Through Madam Chair, we had looked at starting them towards the later end of Q3, moving into Q4. So yes, into the winter season.
Oh.
And spring.
Yeah. I don't think you're gonna get adequate uptake by having them in the winter. That's my opinion. Okay, Councillor Cardin Cole. Go ahead, put yourself on.
Thank you. Just in response to the webinar comment, I don't feel like a webinar would be any more accessible to someone who isn't able to access an online application form or an online survey. But, you know, if we are going into a winter or hopefully more a spring, reaching out, then hopefully Canada Post would be. Because I kind of feel that strongly that a good representation of the whole municipality would definitely be obtained through a mail out, as costly as it might be. And hopefully Canada Post will be on board by then. Thank you.
Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. My question is, those numbers are just for the startup here in the corridor area, or does that include whatever we talked about Mount Uniacke too?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, this is for the actual fixed route service itself. So this doesn't include the future routing options that were outlined in the plan. Those would be additional beyond this.
And you know how much we're talking about?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, we didn't ask the consultant to provide us that level of analysis. Like, you really would need to go to a feasibility study for each of the routes as they come, and as you're prepared to sort of start looking at those. So similarly, as we've done with the corridor one, you start with a feasibility study, then you move into a business plan, and then you move into sort of your pre-pilot information to sort of move that forward. But you would need to start and actually basically do what we did for the corridor route. You would do that in Mount Uniacke. You would do that in the Shubenacadie rural routing option that they presented. And you'd need to define sort of in a greater detail what those actual routes are and do exactly that analysis that we did in the corridor in terms of how those routes play out and where are the stop locations and et cetera. Something to keep in mind too is that, you know, we had originally within the business plan, it outlines, you know, there's the opportunity to use community transportation as well, and use that as sort of your hub and spoke model to bring people into that system. And so those are still options that we can examine through this as we go forward.
So those numbers are just for one area, right? Like,
yes, that's these numbers that we've presented to you this evening are just for the corridor fixed routes.
You're gonna go to my area and you're gonna go to other area and tell them, okay, we were just thinking about just that area and we never thought about how much it's gonna cost to put you on. I don't think that's a good idea. Plus, if you wanna go to Mount Uniacke, you gotta add some more, or even to Shubenacadie, you gotta find parking for those people. They're not be able, like, if they live in a rural area, they have to drive to a parking lot. So are you gonna be available, are you gonna have a paved parking lot and cleared all the time, like, for them to park? Or are you gonna tell them, okay, let somebody drive you and go on a bus, let somebody pick you up? Nobody's gonna do that. So that defeats all the purpose. So you gotta have parking for people, like, to park and park and go. Like, I don't think that's gonna run in Mount Uniacke. Like,
so
I can't see it.
So through you, Madam Chair, yeah, so all of that would, like, that's what you would determine through your feasibility study and your business plan, right? You would figure out where those locations are, what the implications are of those locations, and then you would determine the costs from that. So, you know, that is the next step. So, you know, if that's the direction that council wants to go, you know, if the corridor service and then you're looking at additional routes on top of that, then yes, you do need to go to a feasibility study to examine that and bring that back to council.
I thought when we first talked, we talked about Mount Uniacke too at the same time, so I don't know if I'm missing something, but I don't think it's gonna be a good sell anywhere outside here, and maybe you could, as Councilor Gardner-Cole saying, you cannot sell it here probably, because even here, not everybody can walk to those bus stops. Like, I know in Sackville, they drive from their home, they park in Sackville and they go on a bus, like, I don't know, so it's tough for me to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Through you to the chair, I know you're gonna have a hard sell, Graham. It's gonna be a chore, but I think you're up for a challenge, by the sounds of it. My question is Community Rider gonna be involved with this, and can you discuss that? I know you've been talking to them.
Through Madam Chair, yeah, sorry, that was what I was alluding to. Yeah, there were a couple of different options. We did meet with the Community Rider Board as part of, at council's direction, after the business plan was completed. And so we are examining what those options would be with them. And as we go forward through the public engagement, there is the opportunity, as council sort of starts to gather more information, to continue those discussions with Community Rider.
Thank you.
CAO.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I just wanted to remind councillors, we are part of a larger application for funding that you had given us direction to go forward with. And things like the feasibility study for Mount Uniacke Transit are in that funding request. So we went through the long-term plan for what it might look like if we went down the transit route. And those types of studies are in there. We don't have the data now. I mean, the work that's been done on this so far for this fixed route, the same thing would have to be done. So the funding is there, the funding's not there. The application for funding has been put in to do that kind of work. So I don't want you to think that, because we did talk about it at one point in one of these meetings, that, so if you go ahead with the corridor, what next? And do you do sort of community rider into the rural areas? Do you have Mount Uniacke tied into Sackville? Like, that's all part of that regional transportation plan. We don't have answers to that yet. I mean, the plan just came out, and the work that we have to do to get this service off the ground would be immense. I mean, it's not going to come without its challenges, but we do have that long-term vision of, okay, we have to start somewhere. So where do you start and where do you plan to go? Mount Uniacke is a key piece to this in the long term, but how long term, I can't tell you that, nor can Graham. But I think just being in Mount Uniacke, you can see how that would be feasible to tie into that HRM system and get people to where they need to be. And again, transit people don't change their habits overnight. This is sort of that fundamental shift, and it is a public service. You don't go into a transit program thinking that it's going to cover all of its own costs. This is a public service, as someone said earlier, like police, like health, like education. So I guess you have to go into this realizing that, and realizing that not everyone is going to use the service, but also being assured that if council wants to go there, the plan supports that, to have sort of Mount Uniacke and the rural folks have connection to this transit or some form of transit into HRM. So that's always, when we talk about it at the planning level, sort of that long-term strategic piece, those two pieces are always in the conversation. But I can't tell you you're going to get there in 2 years. I don't know when you'll get there. It'll all depend on how fast the province is moving, how much money's on the table for these types of programs, what kind of applications get approved. But we have to start somewhere. And public consultation on this piece is sort of that next logical step. Thanks.
Councillor Musa?
Well, I understand what you're talking about, but my point, I'm raising a point that's gonna be very costly for the municipality to, if they wanna go the Mount Uniacke route. Like, the bus station in Sackville is not for the Sackville people. It's for the people who live outside that drive to Sackville, park there and use the bus. So Mount Uniacke, you're not gonna go by every house and go on East Uniacke and pick up people. People gonna drive all the way up. You gotta find a place for them to park too, so that's gonna be in your plan. That's what I'm trying to say. So and I can't see anywhere you could find that piece of land that you're gonna put that parking there. Unless you wanna put it next to the library, that's it, so, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Councillor Garden Cole take a chair back.
Thank you, Madam Warden.
Okay. Well, I'm glad some of the questions that were asked because I kind of naively thought when it said, this is going to be our transit plan. This is our whole transit plan that's going to be taken out to the public. And in the discussions I sat through, there was going to be something, maybe a day, a week in this area and that area or whatever, that would get people to that transit. But that's not going to happen until a few years down the road. This plan that's being talked about is just a corridor line. And I hear Councillor Musa, I can pretty near imagine if the public gets engaged in the rural areas in this. I can just pretty well imagine. It's not going to be popular. And that may be putting it mildly. I know I have, and I suspect Councillor Rhino too, for a lot of years, I've worked really hard at explaining to the public that no, you don't pay for all the things that the corridor area have. They pay for the water, they pay for the sewer, and I think we've made some real headway in making people think that, they're not paying for things they don't get. This will be a very, very tough sell. And I'm gonna be brutally honest here. I'm not entirely sure how hard I want to work at selling it, because I'm not sure if I'm convinced it's the right time. So it's, go to the public. Do some webinars if you want to, but no, I agree, that's not the way you're going to engage the majority of the public. And if it means wait till Canada Post is back and mail out a survey, then wait till Canada Post is back and mail out a survey. And no, a lot of people won't do it. But at least every household will have had the opportunity to do it. And with regards to apartments and renters, I fully understand that they pay for their services through their rent. I also understand that there are controls in place that prevent landlords from raising rents beyond a certain amount every year. So it's always going to be a bit of a catch-up thing. So, yeah, transit's a tough subject, and I don't know what answers you're going to get. My biggest concern continues to be that the right questions are asked in the right manner and see where it gets, because I guess those are my comments. I don't think, they don't have transit in the town of Truro. And they have better density nodes than we do. So, anyway, yeah, that's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Musa.
Just one small request for Graham, please. If you don't mind, when you go to the public, instead of putting just one $300,000 home, make sure you put the $700,000 and the $800,000, because there's nothing that, you cannot even buy a trailer now for $300,000 anywhere. So I think people with the heavy tax bill should know how much without trying to make the calculation and stuff. So add up some 500, 400 increment, 100 increment, and put it there.
Yeah, through you, Councillor, we do, through you, Madam Chair, we do have, on this chart alone, we do have the $300,000, $400,000, and $500,000 assessment. I did. So those are there.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no one left to speak, we've got a motion on the floor, so we'll go to the vote. And the motion has passed 10-1 with,
We don't know yet.
okay. Okay, with Councillor Musa voting nay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I ask a
Yes,
question?
sure.
Thank you.
Going to the public, will we have opportunity to weigh in on the methodology of that again before it happens?
1 minute, Adam.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think from the conversation today, and the conversation this topic always brings, throughout our planning process, we will come back with a communication engagement plan at a committee level to talk that through.
So we don't need a motion to make sure that happens?
No, it's pretty clear in my mind that we should come back and talk to you. You can
Well,
make a motion if you choose to.
But I would assume that would include us having a look at the survey
Yeah, sorry, coming back with the survey questions and the plan, yes.
and the plan,
Yeah,
be it Canada,
Yeah.
and the timing, all of that stuff.
And the budget, because it won't be cheap.
And the budget.
What we've talked about so far.
Well, the whole project isn't cheap.
I just wanted to prepare you, it's not going to be $15,000,
Mhm.
is what we've heard you'd like to have.
Okay, thank you, Graham and Jordan. Next item on the agenda is an in-camera possible legal item, so we will wait to go in camera.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded, motion passed, we're going in
Aye.
camera. Oh, okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, folks, so we just met in camera to discuss a possible legal issue, and there are no motions coming forward from that. And seeing no other items on the agenda, we will call this meeting